3 people. All right. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. You've probably heard this famous line from President Ronald Reagan's famous 1987 speech in front of the Berlin Wall in Germany. This is the iconic quote that most people remember. However, there is a great deal more significance to the speech's content and the historical circumstances in which it was given. I've researched the speech using the Reagan Presidential Library, historical analyses, and Reagan's own words from his 1987 transcript, which has helped me to better understand its significance. Today, I will explain the historical context of Reagan's speech, its central message, and its long-lasting influence. Firstly, it must be noted that the importance of Reagan's speech cannot be fully appreciated unless one understands the political climate of the day. It was given during the Cold War when the American and Soviet tensions were high and treaty negotiations were extremely tense. According to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, Reagan's foreign policy was dedicated to ending the spread of communism. And, quote, Reagan believed that the nation should negotiate with the Soviet Union from a position of strength, end quote. This led to him being ideologically aggressive in his pursuit of the objective. And leading up to Reagan's impactful speech, Gorbachev became the General Secretary of the Communist Party. This took place in 1985, and as leader of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev aimed at softening some of the Soviet policies in place of the day. This led to more open communication between the United States and Russia and better negotiations. It even led to the Reykjavik summit in Iceland in 1987, in which Reagan and Gorbachev were productive in arms negotiations. Despite improving relationships, however, Europe remained divided. Many of the countries were a part of the Soviet Union wanted freedom, and the Berlin Wall stood out as an obstacle to this freedom. One side, West Berlin, enjoyed political and economic liberty, and on the other side, East Berlin suffered under communist regime. 1987 marked the 750th anniversary of Berlin's founding, and the notorious wall became the subject of Reagan's speech. When President Reagan addressed his audience, he stressed the need for one Berlin. His central message was that the wall must come down. He illustrated the differences between the two sides of the city, one flourishing and free, and another suffering under a totalitarian regime. Reagan argued that as long as the wall stood, freedom could not be accomplished. However, Reagan did express cautious optimism for Soviet advancements. He acknowledged that there was talk of new policies from Moscow, that some political prisoners had been released, and even some Western broadcasts were no longer being jammed. These observations led to his most famous portion of the speech. He said, quote, "Are these the beginnings of profound changes in the Soviet state? Or are they token gestures intended to raise false hopes in the West or to strengthen the Soviet system without changing it? We welcome change and openness, for we believe that freedom and security go together, that the advance of human liberty can only strengthen the cause of world peace. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." End quote. This speech was a call to action, and it was a message calling attention to the dangers of communism. Reagan encouraged unity in Berlin and expressed the United States' willingness to work with the Soviets. However, President Ronald Reagan's speech was initially met with criticism. The Western media was worried that his rhetoric was unwise, and the Soviets found it provocative. The United States State Department even was worried that it would halt relationships with Gorbachev after making progress recently. However, only 2 years later, on November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. This was a monumental event, and it symbolized the beginning of the end of the Cold War. Eastern European nations gained more freedom, East Germans migrated freely to the West, and eventually the Soviet Union collapsed. Because of these historic changes, the speech came to be reassessed. It is now viewed as a defining moment in the Cold War history. Reagan's former speechwriter and Hoover Institution fellow Peter M. Robinson, as cited in DeWitt 2019, said that, quote, "The speech became retroactively prophetic, if that makes sense. Once the wall fell, the speech seemed to have summed up and even predicted the final phase of the Cold War." End quote. In conclusion, President Ronald Reagan's Berlin Wall speech remains as an important speech in American history. The adverse political climate in which it was delivered, its powerful message, and its profound influence on global events demonstrate its significance. Hopefully you come away with a better understanding of the effect of President Reagan's speech, and Reagan's call, quote, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," continues to echo as a defining moment in the fight for liberty around the world.